"Don't move. That photo wasn't supposed to exist." The whisper came out so soft it almost disappeared into the vast silence of the Carter estate. Yet it struck Lily Johnson like a sudden cold wave she hadn't expected on a warm Texas morning. She froze in the middle of the marble hallway, her small fingers still clutching the edge of a leather-bound folder she had accidentally knocked off a side table just seconds before. The polished floor reflected the soft glow of the chandeliers above, turning everything into a dreamlike mirror of gold and shadow. William Carter stood at the far end of the corridor, his tall frame motionless, his tailored suit immaculate, but something in his posture had changed the moment his eyes landed on what had fallen. Not anger, not irritation, something quieter, something heavier. Lily slowly lowered her gaze to the photograph lying half-exposed on the floor. It was old, edges worn, slightly faded like it had survived years of being hidden and forgotten. In the image, a younger William stood beside a small child with the same sharp eyes, the same quiet intensity in their expression. The boy in the photo smiled faintly, holding onto William's hand as if the world depended on it. Lily didn't understand why, but her chest tightened in a way she couldn't explain. "Who is that boy?" she asked gently, her voice breaking the stillness like a small stone dropped into deep water. William didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped forward once, then stopped as if an invisible line had been drawn between him and the past. The air in the hallway seemed to grow thinner, heavier, as though the mansion itself was listening. "You shouldn't be here," he said finally, his voice controlled but distant, like a man speaking from behind glass. Lily blinked, confused, her dark curls falling over her face as she tilted her head. "I didn't mean to drop it. It just fell." William's eyes remained fixed on the photograph, not on her. "That's not what I mean." Another silence followed, longer this time, filled only with the faint ticking of a distant grandfather clock somewhere deep inside the house. Lily slowly crouched down and picked up the photo again, holding it carefully as if it might break under her touch. The moment her fingers closed around it, William's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a flicker of tension tightening his jaw. "That picture, where did you find it?" he asked. Lily pointed back toward the study door she had just come from. "It was inside the folder on your desk. I was looking for paper because you told me to organize things." Her words were innocent, but they landed like something far more complicated. William turned his head slightly toward the study, as if measuring the distance between truth and memory. Then, unexpectedly, his gaze drifted back to Lily, lingering this time, studying her face in a way he hadn't before, noticing things he had overlooked. The shape of her eyes, the subtle tilt of her smile, the way she stood without fear in a place that made most adults hesitate. "What's your name again?" he asked quietly. "Lily," she answered without hesitation. Something in his expression tightened further, a faint crease forming between his brows. He repeated the name under his breath, almost like testing it against an old memory. "Lily." The photograph trembled slightly in his hand as he took it from her without asking, holding it closer now. The boy in the image seemed to stare back at him with an accusation that time had never erased. Lily watched him carefully, sensing that something important but invisible was happening right in front of her. "Is he your son?" she asked softly, her curiosity innocent but precise. William didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked at the child in the photo, then slowly raised his eyes back to her. For a brief moment, the air between them seemed to collapse into something unspoken. "You shouldn't have seen this," he said again, but this time his voice wasn't firm. It was uncertain, almost fragile. Lily hugged her arms lightly, feeling suddenly smaller in the vastness of the hallway. "I'm sorry," she said instinctively, though she didn't know what she had done wrong. William exhaled slowly, turning the photograph over in his hands as if trying to erase its existence by force of thought alone. But the past doesn't disappear just because it is ignored. It lingers. It waits. And in that moment, standing beneath the golden light of the Carter estate, something long buried inside William Carter began to stir, not as a memory fully formed, but as a question he had spent years avoiding. And Lily, unknowingly holding the edge of that question, stood quietly as the man in front of her began to look at her not as a guest, not as a stranger, but as something far more unsettling, something familiar. William did not move for several seconds after taking the photograph. The silence in the hallway felt unnatural, as if the house itself had decided to stop breathing. Lily Johnson stood quietly where she was, her small hands now clasped in front of her, watching the man who seemed suddenly far away even though he was standing only a few feet from her. The photograph remained in his hand, tilted slightly downward, but his eyes were no longer focused on it alone. They were somewhere else entirely, somewhere she could not reach. Finally, he spoke, but not to her at first, almost as if he was speaking to the air around them. "I thought I had locked that away," he said quietly, his voice lower than before, stripped of its earlier control. Lily shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "Locked away where?" she asked gently. William blinked once, as if returning from somewhere distant, then looked at her more directly for the first time since the moment began. "From memory," he answered. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that made the hallway feel even heavier. Lily did not fully understand, but she sensed that whatever this was, it mattered deeply to him. She glanced again at the photograph in his hand. "The boy in the picture looks happy," she said softly, almost like a thought spoken aloud rather than a question. William's fingers tightened slightly around the edges of the photo. He replied, then stopped as if the next words refused to come. A faint sound echoed from deeper in the house, a distant door closing, but neither of them reacted. The world outside this moment seemed irrelevant. Lily took a small step forward, careful not to intrude. "Is he your son?" she asked again, her voice even softer than before. This time, William did not avoid the question immediately. Instead, he lowered his gaze to the floor, then slowly exhaled. "He was my responsibility," he said after a long pause, choosing each word with care. The answer did not feel complete, but it was all he offered. Lily frowned slightly, trying to understand. "Where is he now?" The question hung in the air longer than the others. William did not answer right away. His eyes shifted back to the photograph, and for a brief moment, something in his expression changed, a flicker of emotion that he quickly suppressed. "That is not something I discuss," he said finally, his tone returning to its controlled form, though not as firm as before. Lily nodded slowly, sensing the boundary even if she did not understand it. But she did not look away from him. Instead, her attention drifted again to the image. The boy in the photograph, standing so close to William, holding his hand so naturally, felt strangely familiar. Not in memory, but in feeling. Like a story she had heard fragments of, but never the full version. William turned slightly, as if to put distance between himself and the image, but Lily's voice stopped him again. "He looks like someone I know," she said unexpectedly. William froze. Not visibly dramatic, but enough that the shift was noticeable. "You cannot know him," he replied, almost automatically. Lily tilted her head. "I did not say I know him," she clarified. "I said he looks like someone I know." A quiet tension formed between them again, different from before. William studied her more carefully now, his gaze moving across her face with a precision that felt almost analytical. "Who?" he asked. Lily hesitated, then pointed lightly at the photograph. "Me," she said simply. The word landed softly, but it changed everything in the air between them. William did not respond immediately. Instead, his eyes remained locked on her, as if trying to reconcile what he had just heard with what he believed to be possible. Lily, unaware of the weight of her statement, continued, "When I saw him, I felt like I have seen him before. Not in a picture. Somewhere else." William's jaw tightened slightly, but he did not interrupt. The silence stretched again, deeper this time. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed once, marking time that felt suddenly less stable. William finally spoke, but his voice was quieter now, less certain. "That is not possible." Lily shrugged faintly. "Maybe not," she said, "but it still feels true." For the first time since the photograph fell, William looked unsettled in a way he did not try to hide. He lowered the image slightly, as if seeing it too clearly was becoming difficult. "Where did you come from, Lily?" he asked, not as an accusation, but as a question that carried more meaning than its words suggested. Lily answered without hesitation. "I came here because someone said I could help organize your office. You told me yesterday I could stay while I wait for the social worker." William closed his eyes briefly, as if recalling the arrangement. When he opened them again, the photograph was still in his hand, but it no longer felt like just paper. It felt like something heavier, something that had been waiting to surface for a very long time. And Lily, still standing in the same place, unknowingly remained at the center of something neither of them yet understood was already beginning to change everything. The silence that followed lingered longer than either of them expected, stretching through the wide corridor of the Carter estate like something fragile that could break with the smallest movement. William Carter finally lowered the photograph fully, holding it now at his side instead of in front of him, as if removing it from sight might also reduce its power. Lily Johnson remained still, watching him carefully, her young mind trying to understand the shift in his expression, which no longer looked like simple discomfort but something closer to guarded concern. After a moment, William turned slightly and motioned toward the nearby study without speaking. Lily followed quietly, her small footsteps soft against the polished wood floors, while the weight of unspoken questions moved with them. Inside the study, the lighting was warmer but no less heavy, filtered through tall windows that overlooked the estate grounds. William walked directly to his desk, placing the photograph face down for a moment before opening a lower drawer with deliberate control. Lily stood a few feet away, her eyes scanning the room filled with books, framed awards, and carefully arranged objects that suggested a life built on precision and order. William removed a thin folder from the drawer and paused before opening it, as if reconsidering the decision, then set it on the desk without turning it toward her. Lily, however, had already noticed something unusual. A corner of another photograph had slipped slightly from beneath the folder, its edge visible like a hidden truth refusing to stay buried. Without thinking, she stepped closer. William noticed immediately. "Do not touch that," he said, not sharply, but firmly enough to stop her mid-step. Lily stopped, then nodded slowly. "I was not going to touch it," she replied, though her eyes remained fixed on the edge of the hidden image. William exhaled quietly and adjusted the folder, but not before Lily caught a clearer glimpse. It was another photograph, similar in age to the first, but this one showed William standing in a more casual setting, outside what looked like an older property, and beside him again was the same boy. Only this time, there was something different. The boy was not just smiling. He was leaning toward William as if speaking, as if they were mid-conversation that had been interrupted and never finished. Lily frowned slightly. "Why is he always with you in these pictures?" she asked. William hesitated before responding. "Because he said simply. Lily tilted her head. "Was?" The question landed softly but firmly, forcing the word to linger in the air longer than intended. William did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned slightly away from the desk, placing one hand on the edge as if steadying himself. "Things change," he said finally. Lily looked down at the visible corner of the photograph again. "Did something happen to him?" she asked gently. William's expression tightened, but not in anger. It was more like restraint, the effort of holding something in place that wanted to surface. "That is not something you need to worry about," he replied, though his voice lacked the certainty it had carried earlier. At that moment, the sound of a notification echoed softly from William's phone resting on the desk. He glanced at it briefly, then turned it face down without reading it. Lily noticed the motion. "Is someone looking for him?" she asked. William paused, then answered carefully. "No one is looking for anything anymore." The answer confused her more than it clarified anything. She glanced back at the folder, then at him. "But if someone is missing, shouldn't they be found?" she asked. William did not respond immediately. Instead, he walked toward the window, looking out across the estate grounds as if searching for something in the distance that could not be seen. "Not everything that is lost can be returned," he said quietly. Lily absorbed his words, but did not seem satisfied by them. Her attention drifted again to the partially hidden photograph, and something in her expression shifted, not certainty, but recognition of something she could not yet name. "I saw him before," she said suddenly. William turned slightly, his eyes narrowing just a fraction. "Where?" he asked. Lily thought for a moment. "Not in a picture," she said slowly. "In a place I cannot remember clearly, but it felt real." William studied her more closely now, the controlled distance between them beginning to narrow in a way neither of them fully understood. The room felt quieter again, but this time it was different. Not empty, but expectant, as if something had already begun to move beneath the surface of everything they had said and everything they had avoided saying. William returned to the desk and closed the folder completely, pressing his palm against it for a brief second before removing his hand. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, more measured. "Lily, where exactly did you say you came from before the estate?" he asked. She answered without hesitation, but her eyes did not leave the desk. "The shelter arranged for me to stay with a social worker until placement," she said. William nodded slowly, but his gaze remained fixed on her face longer than before, as if trying to match it against something buried deep in memory. The photograph remained hidden now, but its presence seemed to fill the room more than ever, as if even unseen, it continued to shape everything around them. And for the first time since Lily had stepped into the Carter estate, William Carter no longer looked like a man simply guarding his past, but like someone standing at the edge of a truth he had not yet decided whether he was ready to face. The study remained unusually still after William Carter closed the folder, as if the room itself understood that something important had just been placed out of reach again. Lily Johnson stood near the edge of the desk, her hands loosely clasped, watching him with quiet patience that did not match her age. William did not sit down. Instead, he remained standing near the window, his gaze fixed outward, though it was clear he was no longer seeing the estate grounds. The silence stretched until Lily finally spoke again, her voice careful but direct. "You keep hiding the pictures when I ask about them," she said. William did not turn immediately. When he finally did, his expression was composed again, but less distant than before. "I am not hiding anything," he replied evenly. Lily tilted her head slightly. "It feels like hiding," she said. The words were simple, but they carried a clarity that made William pause. He studied her for a moment, as if trying to determine how much she truly understood versus what she was instinctively sensing. "There are things from the past that do not belong in the present," he said carefully. Lily looked down at the floor briefly, then back up at him. "But I am in the present," she said. William's jaw tightened slightly at that, not in frustration, but in thought. He moved back toward the desk slowly, placing both hands on its surface as if grounding himself. "You are here temporarily," he said. Lily nodded once. "I know," she replied. "But the boy in the picture does not feel temporary." The sentence landed quietly but firmly in the center of the room. William's eyes shifted toward her again, sharper now, though not unkind. "Why do you keep focusing on him?" he asked. Lily hesitated, then answered. "Honestly, because I feel like I have seen him before," she said again. "Not in a picture. In a way I cannot explain." William exhaled slowly, turning his attention briefly to the closed folder on the desk. For a moment, his hand hovered near it, but he did not open it. Instead, he spoke in a lower tone. "Memory can play tricks on people," he said. Lily considered that, but did not seem convinced. "It did not feel like a trick," she replied. A faint sound came from outside the room, footsteps moving along the hallway, then fading. Neither of them reacted. The house felt separate from this moment now, as if everything outside the study had been placed behind glass. William finally pulled out a chair and sat down, though his posture remained rigid. He gestured slightly toward the empty space across from him. Lily approached and sat carefully, her feet not fully reaching the floor. The difference in scale between them made the room feel even larger. "Do you remember everything about him?" she asked. William looked at her for a long moment before answering. "No," he said honestly. "I do not." Lily nodded slowly, as if that answer made more sense than she expected. "Then how do you know what is real and what is not?" she asked. William did not respond immediately. Instead, he leaned back slightly in the chair, his gaze shifting upward toward the ceiling for a brief moment. "That is exactly the problem," he said quietly. The honesty in his voice was different from before, less controlled, more human. Lily leaned forward slightly, resting her hands on her knees. "If you lost something important," she said, "would you try to find it or pretend it was never there?" William looked back at her, his expression tightening again, but not in resistance this time. It was closer to recognition of a question he had avoided for a very long time. "Sometimes finding it means facing things you are not ready to face," he replied. Lily considered his words carefully. "Maybe I am here because you are supposed to face it," she said. The simplicity of her statement created a silence that felt different from the others. Not empty, but dense, as if it carried weight neither of them could ignore. William stood slowly from the chair and walked back toward the window, placing one hand against the glass. "You speak as if you understand more than you should," he said. Lily remained seated, watching him. I do not understand everything, she admitted. But I know when someone is pretending not to feel something. William did not turn around immediately. The reflection in the glass showed both of them in the same frame, separated by distance, but connected by something neither could define yet. After a long moment, he spoke again. If I ask you something, he said carefully, will you answer honestly? Lily nodded without hesitation. Yes. William turned slightly toward her. Have you ever seen the boy in the photograph outside of this house? He asked. Lily thought for a moment, then shook her head slowly. No, she said, but I feel like I have been close to him before. William absorbed that answer without interruption. The room grew quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. Less like avoidance, more like a threshold. He returned to the desk and placed his hand on the closed folder again, this time not covering it, but resting beside it. Lily watched him closely. What happens if you open it? She asked. William looked down at the folder, then back at her. Then I stopped being able to pretend I do not remember, he said. And for the first time, Lily saw something shift in his expression that suggested the past he had been avoiding was no longer something he could keep locked away much longer. William Carter did not leave the study after the conversation ended. Instead, he remained standing near the desk for a long time, as if the weight of everything said still lingered in the air around him. Lily Johnson sat quietly in the same chair, her legs swinging slightly above the floor, her eyes moving between the closed folder and the man who seemed increasingly trapped by his own silence. The house outside the study continued its distant life, but inside, time felt slower, almost paused. Finally, William spoke without turning around. You said you felt close to him before, he said. Lily nodded. Yes. William turned slightly toward her. Where? Lily hesitated, searching her memory carefully. Not a place I can name, she said. It felt like a moment I was not supposed to remember clearly. William's expression tightened briefly, then softened again as if he was trying to separate emotion from fact. He walked back to the desk and placed both hands flat on its surface. If what you feel is correct, he said slowly, then it changes many things. Lily looked at him directly. Does it? She asked. William did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached for the folder again, this time opening it fully. Inside were multiple photographs, documents, and handwritten notes, all carefully organized. Lily leaned slightly forward, but did not move closer without permission. William pulled out one photograph and held it between them. This one showed the same boy from earlier, but now seated inside what looked like a hospital room, holding a small toy in his hand. Lily's eyes focused immediately. He looks sad here, she said softly. William nodded once. That was a difficult time, he replied. Lily studied the image longer. Is this when he disappeared? She asked. William paused at the word disappeared, as if it carried more meaning than she realized. It is when everything changed, he said carefully. Lily frowned slightly. Did he leave? William looked away for a moment, toward the window again. He was taken out of my care, he said, choosing the words slowly. The room became quiet again, but this silence felt heavier, more precise. Lily looked down at her hands, then back at the photograph. Why? She asked simply. William's grip on the photograph tightened slightly. Because I made decisions I should not have made at the time, he admitted, though his voice remained controlled. Lily absorbed that without judgment, only curiosity. Do you regret it? She asked. The question caused William to stop completely. For a long moment, he did not answer. The only sound was the faint hum of air through the vents above. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower than before. Every day, he said. Lily looked at him carefully, as if seeing a different version of him now. Not just the powerful man in the large house, but something more human beneath it. Then why do you not try to fix it? She asked. William's eyes shifted toward her again, sharper now, not in defense, but in emotional strain. Because some things cannot be fixed in the way people imagine, he said. Lily shook her head slightly. That does not sound true, she replied. William exhaled slowly, as if the conversation was pulling him further than he had intended to go. He placed the photograph back into the folder, but did not close it this time. Instead, he left it open between them. You are asking questions that do not have simple answers, he said. Lily leaned forward just a little more. Maybe they are not supposed to be simple, she said. William looked at her for a long moment, and for the first time, the distance between them felt less like authority and more like uncertainty. He walked slowly to the chair again and sat down, this time without the same rigidity as before. "Tell me again what you remember," he said quietly. Lily hesitated, then spoke. "I remember feeling like I belonged somewhere I was not supposed to," she said. William listened without interruption. "And I remember a voice calling a name, but I cannot hear it clearly anymore." William's expression shifted slightly at that, his attention sharpening. "A name?" he repeated. Lily nodded. "Yes, but it feels far away." William lowered his gaze to the open folder, his hand hovering above the photographs without touching them. The room felt different now, no longer static, but suspended in anticipation. Outside the study, the house remained unchanged, but inside, something long buried had begun to move closer to the surface, and neither of them could ignore that it was no longer a question of whether the past existed, but how much longer it would remain hidden. The stillness in the study changed gradually, not with sudden movement, but with a subtle shift in attention, as if the room itself had decided to participate in something long delayed. William Carter remained seated at the desk, but his focus was no longer on the photographs alone. The open folder in front of him now felt less like a collection of memories and more like an unresolved account that demanded attention. Lily Johnson sat quietly across from him, watching as his expression grew increasingly distant, not in absence, but in concentration. For several seconds, William did not speak. Then he reached for his phone resting beside the folder. The screen lit up briefly, reflecting in his eyes. He hesitated before unlocking it, as though the act itself required permission from something internal. Lily noticed the change immediately. "Are you going to look for him?" she asked softly. William paused at the question, then answered without looking up. "I'm going to look for what I should have understood a long time ago." Lily did not fully understand, but she sensed that something important had shifted beyond conversation into action. William stood slowly and moved toward a secondary desk near the far wall of the study, where a larger monitor and several neatly arranged files were positioned. He powered on the system, the soft hum filling the room with a new kind of energy. Lily remained seated but leaned slightly forward, curious but careful not to interrupt. On the screen, a series of archived records appeared. William navigated through them with precise movements, opening folders labeled with dates and internal references that meant nothing to Lily but clearly carried significance to him. After several moments, he stopped, his eyes fixed on a single entry. Lily stood up from her chair without being asked and moved closer, stopping just behind him. On the screen was a scanned document, partially redacted but still readable in sections. A name appeared clearly in one line: Noah Carter. Lily tilted her head slightly. "That is his name," she said quietly. William did not respond immediately. Instead, he leaned closer to the screen, his expression tightening, as if confirming something he had avoided acknowledging for years. "It was," he said finally. Lily looked between the screen and William. "Why does it say was?" she asked. William hesitated, then clicked into another file. A series of notes and reports appeared, some marked with timestamps, others with brief summaries of events long past. He scrolled slowly, stopping at a section that contained a brief reference to relocation and administrative transfer. Lily watched carefully as his hand paused over the mouse. "He was moved," William said quietly, more to himself than to her. Lily frowned slightly. "Moved where?" she asked. William did not answer immediately. Instead, he leaned back slightly from the screen, as if the information carried more weight than he had anticipated. "Out of my direct care," he said finally. The words were controlled, but there was something beneath them that suggested restraint rather than clarity. Lily stepped closer to the desk now, her attention fully on the screen. "Why would someone move him away from you?" she asked. William looked at her briefly before returning his gaze to the records. "Because decisions were made based on circumstances at the time," he replied carefully. Lily nodded slowly, but did not appear satisfied. "That sounds like a reason people use when they do not want to say the real reason," she said. William exhaled softly at that observation, but did not correct her. Instead, he opened another file, this one containing contact records and institutional notes. A name appeared in one section: Evelyn Harper. William paused, then leaned back slightly in his chair. "She handled the arrangements," he said. Lily looked at him. "Can you ask her where he is now?" William did not respond immediately. Instead, he stared at the name on the screen, as if weighing not only the possibility of contacting her, but also what such a question might unlock. "It is not that simple," he said at last. Lily crossed her arms lightly. "It feels like everything important is never simple," she said. William glanced at her briefly, then returned to the screen. He clicked once, opening a communication window. The cursor blinked in silence, waiting. For several seconds, he did nothing. Then he typed a single line. "I need information regarding Noah Carter's last recorded placement." He stopped, reading the sentence again before sending it. Lily watched closely, sensing the importance of the moment even if she did not fully grasp its consequences. The message was sent. The room fell into silence again, but it was no longer the same kind of silence that had filled the study before. This one carried expectation. William leaned back slightly in his chair, his eyes still fixed on the screen. "Now we wait," he said quietly. Lily nodded but did not sit down again. Instead, she remained standing beside him, looking at the open files as if she understood that something irreversible had begun. Outside the study, the estate remained unchanged, but inside, the past was no longer something sealed behind photographs and folders. It had begun to respond. The message remained open on the screen for several minutes without any immediate response, and in that silence William Carter began to feel a weight that was different from anything he had experienced before. It was not uncertainty about business, nor hesitation in decision-making, but something far more personal, something that could not be calculated or controlled. Lily Johnson stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the blinking cursor that still waited for a reply that had not yet arrived. She did not speak, but her presence was steady, as if she understood that this moment carried more importance than anything they had discussed so far. William leaned back slightly in his chair, then forward again, reading the message he had sent for what felt like the third or fourth time. Finally, the screen changed. A response appeared. The sender was Evelyn Harper. The message was brief, but it immediately altered the atmosphere in the room. William read it once without expression, then again more slowly. Lily noticed the change in his face before she heard anything. "What did it say?" she asked quietly. William did not answer immediately. Instead, he stood up from the chair and took a step away from the desk, as if distance could help him process what he had just read. "She confirmed the file exists," he said finally. Lily stepped closer, and William turned slightly toward her, lowering his voice. "And she said the last recorded placement was never followed by a standard transfer record." Lily frowned. "What does that mean?" William hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "It means there is a gap," he said. "A period where there is no official record of where he was." The words settled heavily between them. Lily looked back at the screen. "So he could still be somewhere?" she asked. William did not answer immediately. Instead, he returned to the desk and scrolled further through the message. Another line appeared beneath the first response. Evelyn Harper had added a note referencing a location connected to a private facility outside the city limits, approximately 30 miles away, though the details were incomplete and partially restricted. William paused again. His hand hovered over the mouse, then slowly moved it to highlight the text. "This should not be missing," he said quietly. Lily looked up at him. "Missing?" William nodded once. "Every transfer, every placement, every record is accounted for. This section is not." Lily felt a quiet tension building in the room, not fear, but something closer to anticipation. "What happens if someone hides a record?" she asked. William looked at her for a moment before answering. "It depends on why they hid it," he said. The silence returned again, but this time it was shorter. William stood abruptly and walked toward a cabinet along the side wall of the study. He opened it and retrieved a thin leather case. When he returned to the desk, he placed it carefully beside the computer. Lily watched without speaking as he opened it. Inside was a set of printed documents, older but carefully preserved. William spread them across the desk one by one. Each page contained references, signatures, and institutional references that aligned with the digital records on the screen. Lily leaned closer, her eyes scanning the pages even though she did not fully understand the structure. One detail stood out. A handwritten note at the bottom of one document repeated a name, Noah Carter. "Why is his name here so many times?" Lily asked. William's expression tightened slightly. "Because he was part of a structured guardianship arrangement," he said. Lily looked at him. "And now he is not." William did not respond immediately. Instead, he placed his hand on one of the documents and pressed lightly, as if grounding himself. Now there is no confirmation of his current status, he said. Lily straightened slightly. So no one knows where he is, she said. William looked at her briefly. Not officially, he replied. The distinction lingered in the air. Lily turned her attention back to the screen where the message from Evelyn Harper remained open. Then we find out, she said simply. William looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing the simplicity of her words against the complexity of everything he had built his life around. Finally, he closed the leather case and straightened. If we continue down this path, he said slowly, we may uncover things that were not meant to be revisited. Lily nodded. But they already happened, she said. William did not respond immediately. Instead, he turned back to the screen and began typing again. This time, the message was different. It was not a request for information, but a request for access to physical records and location confirmation. When he sent it, the room felt quieter than before, not because anything had changed visibly, but because something irreversible had begun to move forward. Lily remained standing beside him, her eyes fixed on the screen, as both of them waited for what would come next. The study felt different now, not because anything in the room had physically changed, but because the silence had taken on direction, as if it was pointing towards something neither William Carter nor Lily Johnson could ignore anymore. The message from Evelyn Harper remained open on the screen, but William was no longer reading it repeatedly. Instead, he stood near the desk, staring at a single printed document he had pulled from the leather case. His eyes locked on a line that referenced a location 30 miles outside the city limits, marked under an outdated classification that should no longer have existed in any active system. Lily stood beside him, close enough to see the text, but still waiting for him to speak first. Finally, William broke the silence. This location is not listed in any current database, he said quietly. Lily looked up at him. Does that mean it is abandoned? She asked. William hesitated before answering. It means it was removed from public oversight, he said. The words carried a weight that made Lily straighten slightly. So someone chose for it not to be visible, she said. William nodded once. Yes. Lily turned her attention back to the document. And that is where he might be, she said. William did not immediately confirm or deny it. Instead, he placed the document back on the desk and leaned both hands against the surface, as if grounding himself in something physical to avoid being pulled entirely into what they were discussing. It is a possibility, he said carefully. Lily stepped closer to the desk now, her voice steady. Then we should go there. William looked at her immediately. It is not that simple, he said. Lily frowned slightly. It never is, she replied, echoing something she had heard him say before. The corner of William's mouth tightened briefly, but there was no humor in it. Instead, he turned toward the screen again, where Evelyn Harper's message still awaited further response. He typed a short instruction requesting confirmation of physical access routes and any remaining security protocols tied to the facility. Lily watched his hands as he typed, noticing that his movements were no longer hesitant but focused, as if a decision had already been made internally and was only now being executed outwardly. After a moment, the response arrived. Evelyn Harper had replied again, this time with limited confirmation that access to the location would require direct authorization and that the facility had not been fully decommissioned, only restricted. William read the message once, then closed the communication window without speaking. Lily noticed the shift immediately. What does that mean? She asked. William turned away from the screen and walked slowly toward the window again, looking out across the estate grounds. It means there are people still responsible for what remains there, he said. Lily followed him with her eyes. Responsible for him? She asked. William paused before answering. Possibly, he said. The uncertainty in his voice was different now, less about denial and more about incomplete information. Lily stepped closer to him near the window. Then we asked them, she said. William looked down at her, studying her face for a long moment. If we do that, he said, we will no longer be observers. We will be involved. Lily tilted her head slightly. We already are, she replied. The simplicity of her statement lingered in the air between them. William exhaled slowly and turned back toward the desk. He opened a secure drawer beneath it and removed a small black device, placing it on the surface. Lily watched as he activated it, revealing a secure communication interface separate from the main system. This is not standard procedure, he said quietly, more to himself than to her. Lily remained still. Then why are you using it? She asked. William did not answer immediately. Instead, he entered a secure contact sequence, bypassing multiple layers of verification protocols. Because standard procedures no longer apply when the records are incomplete, he said finally. The message he sent was brief but direct, requesting immediate verification of all personnel and physical inventory tied to the restricted facility 30 miles outside the city. Once sent, he leaned back slightly, the weight of the decision visible in the subtle tension of his shoulders. Lily looked at him carefully. Are we going there today? She asked. William did not respond right away. Instead, he returned to the desk and picked up the photograph that had started everything, holding it in his hand without looking at it immediately. If there is even a small chance that what we are seeing is accurate, he said slowly, then delaying would be a mistake I cannot justify. Lily nodded quietly, as if she had expected that answer. The room fell into a different kind of silence again, not empty, but defined by purpose. William placed the photograph carefully back into the folder, but did not close it this time. Instead, he left it open, as if accepting that whatever came next could no longer be contained. Lily stood beside him, no longer simply observing, but becoming part of the movement towards something neither of them fully understood yet, but both now knew they could not turn away from. The message from the secure system arrived without warning, breaking the heavy silence. Inside the study, like a single pulse of reality forcing its way through something fragile and uncertain. William Carter had been standing near the desk, still holding the edge of the open folder, while Lily Johnson remained close to the window, watching him as if waiting for the exact moment everything would shift. When the notification appeared on the secure device, William's attention snapped immediately to it. He picked it up, reading without hesitation, but the longer he looked, the more his expression changed. Not sharply, not dramatically, but in a slow tightening that suggested confirmation of something he had not wanted to be true. Lily noticed instantly. What did they say? She asked quietly. William did not answer right away. Instead, he lowered the device slightly and exhaled through his nose, as if the weight of the response required a moment to settle before it could be spoken aloud. They confirmed access, he said finally. Lily stepped forward. To the place outside the city? She asked. William nodded once. Yes. The word carried more meaning than its simplicity suggested. Lily looked at him carefully. And they know what is there? She asked. William paused before responding. They know what is supposed to be there, he said. The distinction between what was supposed to exist and what actually existed lingered heavily in the room. Lily moved closer to the desk again, her eyes scanning the open folder where the photograph still rested among the documents. So we can go, she said. William did not immediately confirm. Instead, he placed the device back down and looked toward the window again, as if measuring the distance between the estate and the location they had been discussing for hours. We can go, he repeated slowly. But what we find there may not match what any record describes. Lily nodded without hesitation. Then we still go, she said. William turned back toward her, studying her expression for a moment longer than before. There was no fear in her voice, only certainty shaped by curiosity and something deeper that he could not immediately define. You understand that once we leave this estate, there is no longer distance between us. And whatever this truth is, he said. Lily tilted her head slightly. We are already close to it, she replied. The simplicity of her answer left no space for further argument. William walked back to the desk and began closing the folder, but he stopped before sealing it completely. Instead, he removed the photograph one more time and placed it in a separate protective sleeve, as if acknowledging that it could no longer remain hidden within layers of paper and silence. Lily watched him carefully. Are you afraid of what we will find? She asked. William did not answer immediately. His hand remained still over the sleeve, holding it in place for a moment longer than necessary. I am afraid of what I will recognize, he said finally. Lily frowned slightly. Recognize? William nodded once. Because recognition means I cannot claim I did not know, he said. The words settled between them like something final and unfinished at the same time. Lily stepped closer to the desk again, her gaze returning to the photograph. Then maybe it is better to know, she said softly. William looked at her then, not as a guest or an unexpected presence in his home, but as someone whose perspective had already begun to shift the boundaries of his own. He closed the folder at last, but did not lock it away. Instead, he placed it on the desk within reach. "We leave within the hour," he said. Lily nodded. "I am ready," she replied immediately. William observed her for a moment longer, then turned away to prepare, but the weight of what was about to happen no longer felt abstract. It had become immediate, structured, and unavoidable. As he moved toward the study door to make arrangements, Lily remained by the desk for a brief moment longer, looking at the closed folder and the photograph that had changed everything without fully revealing anything yet. And in that quiet space, both of them understood without saying it that whatever waited 30 miles outside the city was no longer just a possibility, but a truth already in motion, moving toward them just as they were now moving toward it.